Welcome everyone to another episode of Keto Chat. I am your host, Carole Freeman. I am a certified nutritionist and creator of the Fast Track to Keto Success program. Today, we have somebody all the way from Argentina, and he's joining us after a very long day of seeing patients. And so this is Dr. Ignacio. I've been practicing his last name. Hopefully I don't butcher it. Cuaranta. Cuaranta?
That's perfect. Cuaranta.
He is a board-certified clinical psychiatrist, and he's in charge of the mood disorders department at Neurosciences Clinic in Rosario, Argentina. Born and raised there, and I got the privilege of meeting him at Low Carb San Diego earlier this year in 2017, and I'm just so excited about the work that you're doing, and I just wanted to give share your stories of success with everyone. And so we've got a lot to talk about. I'm really excited, and we couldn't turn on the recording fast enough. He was just sharing with me all these great work that he's doing. And so how did you get interested in psychiatry work in the first place? Like, how, did you know when you went into medical school, or is that came up later? Or let's go back from the beginning.
Okay, actually, my dad is a cardiologist who you also met in San Diego, and my mom is a psychologist. So I think it's kind of like I'm kind of like a mix of them both.
Okay.
I've also been interested in human interactions and behavioral sciences. It's always something that has driven my interest. When I was in med school, I was also reading a lot of stuff about psychology, and so it was kind of like a natural thing for me. And I also, when I had to decide whether if I was going into psychiatry or endocrinology, because that was my other interest. I was very keen on endocrinology, the hormonal function in the body, and obesity. I also spent, like, in 2006, 4 months rotation it was not a fellowship because I was not a doctor already, in the Beaumont hospital in Michigan.
Okay.
I was at the obesity department there, and I fell in love with all of the work they were doing. And so this getting myself involved in all the nutritional aspects and all of the behaviors that are involved in eating and all the eating disorders just kind of like came natural for me, and it's kind of like a comeback to my old first love, that it was nutrition, and being able to mix all of this into my practice is really a bless for me. I mean, it's really awesome.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, so how did you get interested in nutrition? Was that
actually in first place? I, like a lot of people that I met that are doing this kind of a keto approach or use intermittent fasting. In the first place, I started using it for myself, just for my own health, just to feel better. I looked I did into many approaches. I did a high protein diets. I did just to go with my my gym routines. I did but I always kind of like lacked. I was seeing that lack of results that we are all looking for. All of the diets result, they were very hard for me to follow for a long time. I didn't have a structure that I could follow that fit into my life. So it's kind of like a long time looking for something that really works.
Okay. How did you first hear about keto? Everybody's got a different story about how they even heard about it. So low carb, high fat, or keto, like how did you even hear about it in the first place? Was it at the medical like internship that you did or preceptorship?
Actually, what I did there at the Beaumont Hospital, they did an approach that was a high protein, low fat, and low carb, especially low carb. But they weren't high enough in fat, in the fat part, and they used packets of protein.
Oh yeah, okay.
Like to mix with milk or water, and it was very strict. Some of them, they even prepare them for to go into the bariatric surgery. So they did all of the checkups and the follow-ups of those patients. I've seen pretty good results in people lowering their insulin intake and all of their medications, hypertension medications, diabetes medications, heart statins, all of the medications that go with obesity. But I felt that something was missing, because a lot of patients started to find it hard to follow after 6 months, a year. Started the results started to stagnate, and it was hard to follow overall. And actually, I was wandering around in a minimalist page, and they suggested the work of Brad Pilon. I don't know if you're familiar with it, with his book Eat, Stop, Eat. It talks about intermittent fasting. That was like 2.5 years ago. So I read that overnight, and then the next day was my 24-hour fasting period. Okay. I jumped right in, and I did it, and I felt great. So, I opened my eyes and said, this can have something very meaningful behind. So kind of like my approach was initially for about 8 months or a year, mostly intermittent fasting, coming back from a paleo approach. It's kind of like eating more natural, trying to avoid grains, cereals, sugar, and emphasizing like the meat products and overall natural products in general, which we have here in Argentina, like very good meats, very good animal products. Really, we have wonderful products and very natural also. And we also have all of the cereal parts of it, all of the marketing. We have the same. I lived in the US, and I lived for most of my life in here, and I see a lot of patterns that repeat here and there. Something that gets popular in the US, like it doesn't take long to get popular in Argentina or the rest of the world. So we kind of seen that obesity, epidemic here in Argentina too, and all of the problems that I'm mostly interested in, that are cognitive decline, depression, anxiety disorders. So I kind of like eased into it, and I started doing like more an LCHF approach. I don't go like very strict about it. I don't measure ketones. I just go, and like with a natural approach with myself, and I try to experiment with different things and trying to incorporate new things, herbal products, and try to see what works what works best with me. And that's kind of like the same approach I use with my patients, with goal-oriented and depending on where the patient is at.
Okay. So do you kind of just follow then like a list of foods you eat and foods you don't eat, or do you have it, is that kind of how you start with your patients?
What has given me the best results, coming from with a medical background, with very little formation with that, most of what I know, I would say all of what I know, it's because I love to read about it. I'm every day studying about it. I'm writing about it. What I found that works best for me is kind of like a structure, some kind of like fasting, short periods of intermittent fasting of about 14, 16 hours to start getting used to it, start getting the feelings of improving their relationships with their hunger, trying to differentiate the hunger with the appetite, the voluntary abstinence from eating, trying to gain some perspective, trying to gain some distance from food, allows them to, then they ask me, so when I eat, what should I eat? Okay, and they find it a lot easier to make healthier choices when they've been in a period, in a certain period of fasting. So mostly for the first month, I worked around trying to get to those 16 hour periods of fasting and an 8-hour period of eating, kind of like a lean gains approach.
Okay.
And then I start, and it really depends on each patient, because there are a lot of patients that have been in every diet imaginable, in all of the diets that have been around, they've done it. So they a lot of times they know a lot about food, and they get surprised. That's exactly the opposite that all of what every nutritionist has told me.
Yes.
And I say, okay, that's why it's called a paradigm shift. That's why I call it a paradigm shift. And it's kind of like bizarre, because it's a paradigm shift, but it's the way that the human physiology it's meant to work, and it's the way it's been for all of the human history. So it really, it feels very natural to them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, how they receive that, right? Because most of what they've been told is, well, don't skip breakfast, and you got to eat every 2 or 3 hours, but it sounds like you have a really good way of addressing that. It's like, well, if that's what you've been doing, how's that working for you, right? Not so well. So
exactly. Regarding this, I follow most of Dr. Jason Fung's approach.
Mm-hmm.
I spent a week with him in April in his clinic in Toronto. After reading, of course, all of his work and watching all of his videos, I became very interested in his work. So I wrote to him, and he and Megan Ramos, they both invited me to go there and see how they work. And I was very happy to see that the work that I was doing there, that I'm doing here, I felt very reassured, very reinforced that what I'm doing is it's a correct approach, and the results that I'm getting with my patients also is very satisfying to see all of the good response, all of the results, what the feedback that I get, because I've been doing this for 2 years now. Since I started, I started with a lot of people around me, family members, and that saw the results in me. Me myself, I lost 33 or 34 pounds since I started, over a period, of course, of a year and a half. But I've been able to maintain it for almost a year and a half now. So really, it's been amazing. And I follow that kind of approach with the intermittent fasting that I talked with Jason Fung. So it really works.
Yeah, well, it's hard to refute. So share with us some of the ways it's impacted your patients. Like, what are some of your favorite stories of how it's transformed people's health?
Well, one of the stories that happened from one of my patients. This is a 72-year-old woman. She's been overweight for the most second half of her life now. She's missing a leg from a car accident since she was 9. So that wasn't a very bad thing for her, because she almost grew up all of her life without that limb. But what tickled her the most, what really hurt her inside, and it was really she was having suicidal thoughts. She was very depressed, and she was already on antidepressant medication. Was that she couldn't lose any of her weight. Of course, she's kind of limited with her physical activity, with being overweight and all. Even she had a lot of difficulty putting in her orthopedic, implant. And I started with her. I talked to her about this diet, this kind of approach, and I tried to do it, ease her into it. She's been able to lose over 15 kilos. That would be about, it's more than 30 pounds. And she was able to reduce her antidepressant medications, reduce her, her benzodiazepines, that are anxiolytic. She's more happy. She sends me text messages very often, expressing her gratitude. She feels more alive. She tells, she always tells me that her mental clarity improved a lot. And she's not even that strict regarding keto. And that's what I think that has limited her continuing losing weight, losing fat, because she still has some fat to lose. But I try not to go too strict about it or to pressure my patients into doing very long fast or doing very strict LCHF. But of course, there are some people that really need to be very strict because, they are on, their health is on the line and they cannot be so easygoing with it, and they really need to take action now. So I try to go, with what the patient really needs and try to assess that in the first couple of interviews, and try to build a relation and try to be supporting, all of these. I try to warn them that all other doctors and other perhaps nutritionists and their family members, try to work them out of work them out of their way. But in warning them, they are kind of prepared, because if you say they are going to tell you to stop it, they know it in advance. So it's they are able. I have pretty good rates of adherence. I don't have many patients that have dropped out, and the ones that had really didn't get it from the first time. I mean,
okay.
So really. So.
Is this something that on the first visit you're kind of talking about, or is it something that later on after you've seen them for a few appointments?
Actually, in the first couple of interviews with the patients, I always assess how they sleep, how they manage stress, how are their energy levels, and of course, physical activity, sleep, and eating. Those are three cardinal symptoms or areas in every people's life, in every person's life. So really, I mean, I think if you don't assess how they are eating or what their eating behavior is, I right now I don't see my assessment as complete, because I see, I evaluate about 8 or 10 new persons a week, because that's one of my roles in the clinic that I work. I do the first interview, and I wouldn't exaggerate if I say that more than half of them have some food-related disorder that they can somehow improve. Cognitive decline, anxiety disorders, compulsive eating. I'm not talking about declared or frank bulimia. I'm just saying anxiety around food. Those people that really, when they see something they can't stop, they say, okay, I'm not going to eat anymore, and 5 minutes later they are attacking the refrigerator again. Those type of eating, about the crocodile brain speaking for themselves. And they really, what really bugs me the most is that most of the medical professionals and nutritionists and everybody puts the blame on them, like if it was like a moral issue.
Yeah.
Which I really think it's not.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you realize how remarkable it is that, as a doctor, you see that depression and anxiety are actually, related to food, and that those can get better. Perhaps you've heard the stories of here in the States about how doctors aren't trained here to think that way, that food has nothing to do with your health and well-being and what's going on in your mind, and anxiety and depression. And so we have a very big gap in our medical establishment, whether it's psychiatry or traditional, a regular family medicine doctor or something like that they just don't even see how those are related. So do you run across that as well from your fellow physicians? Like, do they think what you're doing is crazy, or are they starting to see the results?
Well, you hit the point there, because one of the reasons that I went to San Diego was kind of like to start building a network, a support network of physicians around the globe. So I'm in contact with some of them. It's very refreshing. It's very calming to see that you're not alone. I'm obviously not alone, but I'm kind of isolated down here regarding this. There are some people that are using the ketogenic diet, but they're still being taught at nutrition schools that can only go for 15 days or 21 days and then get it out because it raises cholesterol, because it can give you arrhythmia, and a lot of horrible things that they tell them. And don't even let me get started about fasting, something that has come with a human being from its birth. And right now it's something that will your body will eat your brain 20 minutes after you wake up if you don't have something to eat, when actually it's all of the opposite about that. Most people don't feel hungry when they wake up. They have all of the chemical balance in them to start their day, to tackle the day, to tackle their activities. And instead of focusing on their work, their productivity, they have to be around food all the time, eat every 2 hours, snacking. And, it's all of the time that they cannot draw their brains and their minds out of thinking about food. Even today, I have this patient that he's already lost 11 kilos in 2 months. So that's about 25 pounds or something. He feels a lot. He came in with an anxiety disorder, and he's now his mood has improved a lot because anxiety disorders impact in the mood when you have it for some time, because it gives you a lot of limitations in your daily life. And he's more calm. There's a lot of things that come with losing weight, and I always tell the patients, losing weight is the consequence. It's not the main goal, because there's a lot of other host of health benefits that go with it. And he also sees that mental clarity, the clarity in his thoughts. He's not having those many negative thoughts. He's even more confident. When you start losing weight and you see that you're doing something that is effective, you feel better about yourself. And I cannot stress this enough. It's very gratifying to see that you can help your patients, even though they came with an anxiety disorder, help them with overall.
Yeah. So have you been really surprised by all of the benefits that your patients have got? I know you had intentions and had optimism that it would help them, otherwise you wouldn't have been recommending that, but have you been in awe of all the benefits that they're getting?
Well, that's one of the things that I always tell my patients and my friends and the people that surround me. It's that really I started this over 2 years ago, and I hadn't been keep doing it as intensively as I've been doing it and getting into it, if I hadn't been seeing all of this positive feedback that I'm seeing. This is where I get most of my energy, and really I want to give it a structure, and I want to scale it to impact even more people. I have a vision that is kind of like the vision that you guys have in the States, that is changing, the dietary guidelines, at least to stop recommending that 50 or 60% of the calories come from carbohydrates, and even processed carbohydrates.
Yeah.
It's a vision because it's kind of like an ideal. It's a hard thing, but I think it's well worth it to fight for it. And I think this time around, this we are doing right now, this global connection, the internet, they won't be able to stop all of this movement kind of thing that we're going through, because nobody can stop someone to take charge of their own health if the medical department, the medical people, the doctor, the nutritionist, and all of the health people aren't doing it for themselves. So
yeah, that's really remarkable. It reminds me of something that happened a couple weekends ago up here in the Seattle area. I attended the Ancestral Health Symposium, which is, you know, kind of mostly paleo message that's there. And one of the speakers was, I can't remember who it was, but she showed a case example of somebody with schizophrenia that I remember it was like 3 days or something remarkable, maybe 8 days. It was a very short period of time where introduction of a ketogenic diet, and they were completely in remission or no longer had any symptoms. And this was somebody that was, gosh, I wish I remembered all the details of it, but they were, you know, middle or later age, and somebody who'd had it for like 53 years of their life. And so I, you know, screenshotted that, posted that on social media. And one of the immediate comments I got was somebody who works in the United States here in the mental health field. And she was livid that I shared that and how irresponsible it was of me to put that message out there, that was just, you know, ridiculous, that there's no way that would work that way and it was, you know, sending the message that people didn't need their medication, and she was afraid that people are just going to all stop their medication now because they thought this diet would work. And it was really actually, it was a study published, you know, case study by Dr. Westman and some other collaborators, right? And so it's a, you know, it was a real published thing. It wasn't just some anecdotal story that was being shared. And so, I mean, that's just an example of the reaction that we get from people, you know, especially in the mental health field, is that's irresponsible. And we get the same thing with when people share about how a ketogenic diet works for cancer or can help for cancer. And people get that, they get very angry and upset and say that's just irresponsible that we even tell people that that's possible. And so what do you think about that immediate knee-jerk reaction that it's just dangerous and you shouldn't tell people that this is, I mean, it's perplexing for me because we know how powerful it is to actually help heal people of all these things. And so how do we bridge that gap between that fear and what we know really works?
First of all, I think what I first do when I get any kind of comments like that, like I'm crazy or what I'm doing is irresponsible, that they're gonna die when they are fasting and they're gonna drop dead in the middle of a 12-hour fasting period. The first thing I do is this. I remind myself that I have to breathe before I answer. I know the most comforting feeling for me is that I'm doing my best to help my patients in a way that a lot of people are not willing to do. They are not willing to take risk. I always accept that I can. You know, we don't know where we're gonna be 5 years from now or 2 days from now or whatever, but I have the feeling of tranquility that gives me that I study, I put in the work, I really care for my patients, I'm there for them, I give them support. And really, I think this time around we have really a solid science that is backing us up. Mm-hmm. So you know when you have such a robust science that backs you up, and there are studies coming every day. You know, studies are hard to do in the nutrition field. The mental health field it's also hard. If you're not trying medications, it's hard because you have to handle a lot of variables to see that what you're doing is exerting the changes in the patients. But I think it's going to take some time. I think that seeing what Dr. Finney, how he feels when he goes to these kinds of meeting, he's feeling recognized. There's a very strong community. We are all strong-willed professionals that we are not gonna abandon what we do because of some threat or. And you know, I go one patient at a time. They see results. People started asking me what I was doing because I was losing weight, and I wasn't doing some proselytism and selling what I'm doing. People ask me, and I'm passionate about it. So that shows, passion shows that it's self-evident. So eventually, when results are there, and when they get tired of trying different things, they'll eventually give it a try, and they'll see the result, because that's another great thing, is that you see results so soon. If you're going into the path of illness and malaise, and you're hurt, and you're taking a lot of medications, I mean, what can they tell me about that, that person? So really, we have to be calm, patient, but I think this is moving at a faster rate that that the people that we are kind of admiring and doing our work behind, they have to be a lot more patient than we have, because I'm already working in it, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm seeing great results. So that's all of the comfort and gratification that I receive, all the satisfaction, the professional satisfaction and personal that I see of helping my patients and the people around me, because if you have an impact in the people around you, my family, and my friends, and people that there's no better thing, no better feeling than that.
Yeah, I love that. First of all, that's good advice for anybody on the internet. Is take a deep breath before you type anything. That's always good advice. Yeah. Well, and yeah, that it doesn't rile me up anymore when people criticize or question what I'm doing, because I know that we've got all this solid science behind us that really validates it, and then case after case after case of people that are just having remarkable health transformations. And so I don't have any doubts that this is safe and effective. But yeah, in the beginning it was really like, no, but you don't understand. And I think we're going to have those naysayers for a while, and then they're just going to be fewer and fewer of them if everybody else start getting on board and realizing how powerful this is for helping people heal. And they're just going to end up eventually being the lone ones that everybody's like, well, you're the one who's crazy and you're the one who's harming people because you're not sharing this with them. So
exactly. Yeah.
What other things have you seen get better? I mean, depression, anxiety, mental cognition. What are all the different things that you've seen people, improve in their health?
Irritable bowel disease. I have some patients with it, especially the fasting and avoiding refined carbohydrates. You were asking me before, and I didn't quite answer what was my approach regarding foods. If I tell them what to eat or not to eat, I mostly tell them what to avoid, and I try to work with them with their preferences. That's kind of like, it's a lot more easy to motivate them. But really, because I feel that this kind of eating resembles a lot more, or more in a more close manner, what our physiology should do. Really, I don't think that's any pathology that wouldn't benefit of some kind of intermittent fasting and LCHF approach, keto approach in most cases, but not necessarily doing a ketogenic strict diet for long periods of time, because that, to some people in some contexts, it's hard to implement, above all in places like here that that it's not so well known, so they have to be kind of like lonely rangers, in their own manner, and go against what they are being told. But I see benefits of course, I have a patient, he's a 46 years old. He came about with a diagnosis of moderate cognitive impairment. It's kind of like a pre-dementia state. He's been assisted with all of the people around him, his family, his assistants. He hardly remembered things appointments or things that he has to do. And only a month and a half of a ketogenic diet, of a very mild approach of ketogenic diet. He's been saying, I don't know what it is that I'm eating. I think it's the eggs. I'm sure it's the eggs, but I'm more lucid. I have more clarity. I can remember more things. And he lost 4 kilos just like nothing, just like a secondary effect of the diet. So I saw him like a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of like did a different approach with him because of some personal things that he was going through. So I told him, okay, we have to remove this. The first thing that I asked them to remove is sugar, of course, all sugar, sugar drinks, anything that holds sugar, and sugar itself. But of course, all of the cereals, crackers, muffins, all of the products derived from bread. And that's, for most patients, that starts hitting them. And that's the first step. And after that, they see some such good results that they are eager to know more. And that's where I jump in with more, more strength and more emphasis on the things. Incorporate, okay, the coconut oil that is not so common. It's becoming more common right now. We don't have like exogenous ketones to give them, but I rely a lot on coconut oil. So I kind of like give them like a bulletproof tea or bulletproof coffee, just adding, coconut oil to their tea or coffee, and he feels great. And what reversing your diagnosis of dementia means? It's, for a lot of people, that's claiming back their lives. And of course, all of the obesity and but one of the things that I was telling you before is like this compulsive eating disorder, that it's not, maybe it doesn't hold the diagnostic criteria for bulimia, because they don't have purgative behavior, they don't use laxative, they don't vomit, but they are, they feel guilty, and they feel that they are not in control. And there's there's nothing more validating or limiting for someone that feeling that is not in control of their diet, or they're not in control of what they eat. So it's really that's really empowering for people, to see or to think that they are more in control of their lives.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I mean, I came out of school with a very mind-body approach to, a degree in nutrition and in psychology. And the way that I was trained was, the reason that people had those eating disorders, a binge eating disorder, was that, foods were labeled off limits, and they kept trying to do these restricted diets, and that just what made them obsessed with food. And so the solution I was taught coming out of school was that, all foods are legal, and don't put people on restricted diets, because that's what's making them have the eating problems in the first place. And I learned, finding keto through a car accident, not because I was, actively seeking a way of losing weight, was actually, getting my body to be able to access its own fat for fuel, like, gave me that freedom. It no longer made me obsessed with food and constantly hungry and craving. And so the irony of a restricted diet actually gave me freedom from being obsessed about food. And it sounds like that's what you're seeing too. So, and over and over and over again, that's what my clients are reporting, is that, like, the first time in their life, they actually feel at peace with their body and with food. And they're no longer constantly obsessed with, what am I going to eat? What should I eat? What can't I eat?
That's one of the things that this patient I was telling you about told me today. This is like the perfect approach for me, because I don't have to eat I don't have to force myself to have breakfast. I don't have to force myself to eat a couple hours after that. I don't have to carry food with me. If I'm not home for lunch, I can push my breakfast, that would be his lunch, a little longer, and that's perfectly fine. He asked me today, sometimes I don't feel hungry, and I don't get home until it's 3 or 4 p.m. having eaten at 8 p.m. He's not morbidly obese, but he still has a good 20 more kilos to lose. So that's perfectly fine. You just you can do 1 meal a day. I explained you always have to explain what some of the adaptation symptoms could be. You have to incorporate the minerals, do some salt water, some broth. You know, you have a lot of strategies to go about it, but really it's kind of like so easy to you know to extend your fasting hours after you've been doing it for some time.
Yeah.
And it feels natural. It really is not. You don't feel like it's something that you're forcing into your body. Of course, it's a stress, but that's the reason why it has so many positive effects. And if you combine that with a ketogenic diet and an LCHF approach, you get the best of both worlds, because it's the improving the ketogenic diet, boosting the ketogenic state and state of well-being.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. Let's see. Yeah, so we talked about anxiety and stress eating. So yeah, I wonder what tips you have for people that let's say, you know, most of the people watching this will probably be in the United States, but people all over the world are going to be seeing this. And so what if somebody's struggling with depression, anxiety, mental decline, and they're struggling with their psychiatrist or psychologist? You know, what tips do you have for somebody to be able to kind of start to incorporate this into what they're doing, or maybe get some more support from the psychologist or psychiatrist? Is there any hope for that? This is a really rambling question. I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, no, I get it. This is something that I'm working on. How to scale, how to impact more people, how to working along with Dean, he's an Australian engineer. He lives in Chile. Okay. We're working along to provide a platform for and you know, give some courses and try to teach people how to do this. I think it's a hard question, because it depends on a lot of things, and it depends. It's a hard thing to give general advice, you know, because but really, if it's a very a pretty big correlation among patients they have depression, that they have obesity, especially among women. You know, there's a lot of body images and issues. One of the things that they could do that it can possibly harm anyone, it's extend the periods of a normal night fast. Let's say, you know, I know up there you eat a bit earlier than we're doing here, but let's say that you eat 8 p.m. It's comforting to tell them you don't need to go. You know, you don't need to force yourself to have breakfast. You can skip breakfast, especially if you don't do it. If your only resource of breakfast, having a breakfast would be something that has refined carbohydrates or sugar-filled foods. So if you can avoid it overall, just have your cup of coffee. We have mate here. I don't know if you're familiar with yerba mate. That's kind of like, it has matein, that it's a methylxanthine, like caffeine. Or so here in Argentina, in South America in general, we drink that, and it's appetite suppressant as coffee is. But the difference is that you can drink it for like an hour or an hour and a half, because you have a thermos and you serve it with a straw. So in general, pushing a little bit your breakfast to till lunch. Let's say that your breakfast is your lunch. Reducing your window of eating to an 8, or at least to an 8 or 10-hour period. If you have diabetes, you know, it's important to be followed by a medical profession. If you have to be lowering your diabetes medication, or in case, let's say, about the antidepressants. It's not it's not from one day to the other, but it's if you're considering that you are too anxious, that you get too anxious around food, it won't hurt. All of the contrary, it will give you perspective to take some distance from food. There are a lot of techniques. There's a lot of places in the internet that give you a lot of tips on how to go along for your first a couple of fasts. But I think that's like the best strategy to get into ketosis if you are not used to it, because at least at the beginning, that's my opinion. At least at the beginning, because it's easier. It just involves the voluntary abstinence from food from a certain period of time, and see how you feel. Go through the adaptation. You have to, it's a period, and it's a life learning course. So avoiding, what I tell my patients, just go about for like 14 or 16 hours and avoid grain, sugar. It's kind of like I repeat all over myself, but I try to put it at as simple as I can. So my rates of adherence really are very high. And then when you are 2 or 3 months into it, and they've lost some weight, they feel better, they feel energized, they feel more vital. I tell them, okay, now it's time. You can start to walk. I emphasize more physical activity. I don't go crazy about it at the beginning, because sometimes they have to drag themselves. So I say, okay, I read a quote that I loved a couple of weeks ago that says, I can't remember who it was, and I'm going to be unfair, but it says, eating less and exercising more is a consequence. It's not the method. So if they come to you and they say, you have to eat less and exercise more, and they don't feel the energy to do it, they don't feel the volition to do it, they don't feel well in order to do that. So it's the other way around. When you feel energetic, you feel, they feel like, okay, I have to go out, I have to go walk, I have to go for a run, I have to go to the gym. I mixed it up with calisthenics, that it's a body weight exercise. I think that helps you get synchronized with your muscles, with your mind, being more, like in a zen state. That's, I think, as a general approach, they can start out, and if it goes well, study and go deeper.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just reinforce that caveat that you threw in there, is that if you're on any medications at all, make sure you're being monitored by your doctor before you do any of these changes, because some of them you'll need some adjustments quickly, but it's pretty safe for everybody just to not eat sugar and grains, right? Like
it doesn't make much sense to have your medications in order that you can eat the food that you shouldn't be eating in the first place.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, if this rings a bell, if this makes sense for a lot of people, it really doesn't hurt to try. The thing is, it's really a shame, and it's really sad that if you tell them, okay, you have to monitor it with your physician, a lot of them will tell them, okay, get off that diet. So in order you can keep on your prescription on. So, being a doctor, that's easier for me, and being a psychiatrist, I really try to be very supportive of my patients. I put a lot of time in because I really think it deserves. It's like an investment. It deserves to be assessed, and has a lot of awesome benefits. But still, this has to be personalized, and we are all different, and the approaches that we do have to be individualized. It cannot be, all of it cannot be general.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. It's just amazing. It's really important. And I'm just so happy to hear of all the success that you're having with your patients. And I'm sure that I'm sure that they're telling other friends, and more people come to see you every day. And I remember what you said too, and when we talked in San Diego, about how the dietitians that work at your clinic or your hospital, about how they're angry at you because you're taking away their business. Is that?
Well, right now I'm working like to turn that thing around. I know it's gonna take time, but I also talked with Dr. Fung about this. He told me once that a story that when he referred the patients to their dietitians, they would tell them, no, you shouldn't fast, that's gonna kill you. And that So he said, he started writing in some of the papers, this patient is not to see the dietitian, because, you know, if you are absolutely certain of what you're doing, you know, it's a tough topic, and I'm not gonna lose my my hope that eventually, you know, the results and all of the what people are saying and how people are feeling, and, you know, educating more people. That's what I'm working right now. I'm writing something in Spanish, trying to put together all of the things that I've learned in my experience, all of the things that I read in all of the books that some of the people that we saw in San Diego.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to put that information in Spanish, available for everyone, and of course trying to educate some dietitians and other doctors that are interested in this. Yeah. But all of the neurological disorders, I think I would say all of the psychiatric disorders can benefit of some kind of approach like we're talking right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, I agree. It's wonderful. So just in kind of wrapping this up, was there anything else that you were hoping I'd ask you about or that you wanted to share?
Well, actually, last July, regarding the cognitive decline, last July I gave a talk at the clinic about metabolic flexibility. And this is a key element in what I think is the greatest benefit of eating a high-fat diet and a low and carbohydrate restricted diet. Is the flexibility and the ability to adapt. And I think that the human, if there's something that makes us human, is the adaptability, the ability to adapt to different environments and different situations. And we are all like soldiers that are doing all of the same. We are all having the same disease. We are all obese. The rates of dementia, they are not going up because of the population is growing older. The rates are going up because there are people in their 40s or their late 30s having some kind of cognitive decline. And that's unacceptable. And we have to step in. And this concept of metabolic flexibility, I think, is very important for your neurons to be plastic, to be able to make new connections, to increase the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, to combine that with learning strategies. Really, I think it's a very interesting times we are living in, being able to reverse some of these pathologies and help them and guide them through their recovery.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I just have one final question for you before you go. The meteor, it's coming to Earth. It's going to kill us all today, our last day on the planet. What's going to be your final meal?
Well, I'm going to have an Argentinian steak with butter and probably some broccoli. Broccoli with butter. I put butter in everything. I do this kind of like 1 meal a day. So when this time of day comes, and of course I cannot forget to throw in a couple of eggs in there.
What kind of cut of steak are you going to have?
I think is it a ribeye?
Okay.
You call it? It's like a ribeye. I make sure that it has a lot of fat in it. And here in Argentina, we do something that you don't do as much in the US. That is, we eat all of the meat organs. You know, we eat a lot of organs of the ruminants. And that gives us a lot of more, you know, it's really, you're eating the whole package. We hardly throw anything out. You know,
yeah,
our intestines.
We're missing that here because we've been all brainwashed to think that that's like trash, but it's actually the most nutritious parts of the animal, really.
Exactly. Yeah. I make sure that it has that delicious contour of fat. I'm go nuts about that.
Nice. Good. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for sharing. You know, like you said, this global connection that we're able to do now with the internet is really great because that helps us speed up all the healing of the planet. So Hey, if you guys enjoyed this, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. We've got lots more interviews coming. We'll put Dr. Ignacio Cuaranta.
Perfect.
We'll put his contact info below. He's got a website coming. It's not up yet, but we'll put his contact info below if you'd like to connect with him. And if you're in Argentina or you just want to reach out and tell him good job for the work that he's doing. We'll have more. So subscribe if you want to see more of these interviews. And that's all for now. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.